past webinars, so I'm excited to see you again. And if this is the first time that you've tuned into a webinar that I've been hosting in collaboration with SPARC, welcome. Really excited to see everyone. And I guess it's more so you seeing me. And I'm really looking forward to this particular topic. I think it's goal setting is something that anyone can benefit from, whether they are a performer in sport or in any other realm of life. And this was a topic that we landed on in taking a look at all the feedback that we received from many of you from the past webinars. We thought this might be a great place on which to lay a foundation for the future of all of your programs. As some of you know, I teach at University of British Columbia, and I have a private practice, and I'm the chair of the Canadian Sports Psychology Association. So we are dedicated to the mental health and mental performance of athletes all across Canada. And I'm just so excited to bring some insights to share with you, and I hope I'm going to learn from you too. So please add any comments, questions at all that occur to you as you're watching tonight in the chat box. We'd love to see if we can help one another with this topic. So the purpose when we're thinking through why goal setting, why now, we'll start by talking about what it is to set goals and why it's important, particularly for coaches to understand how to harness them and use this process with your athletes, but also for some of the athletes that might be on tonight, how they can use it in their own performance and how to enhance things even beyond their sport participation as well, of course. I have 5 different steps. And by no means is this an entire list that you'd need to stick to. These are just 5 that I tend to start with when I'm working with an athlete or a training group or a program or a sport in its entirety in a region. These are 5 that I try to make sure that I get in there. They're really critical, and it's the way I do it, but there are a zillion different ways, and you can take whatever nuggets that you get from this that speak to you and then use them in your practice. And then at the end, some next steps. Hopefully it will just be a bit of a call to action. Okay, when you leave from today, what from this could I then take and pass on to my athletes? Or athletes, what can I then take from tonight that I can start right now or think about for tomorrow when I get up? This is something that I'm going to integrate into what I'm currently working on. So just a quick note on our partnership really quickly. We're just one of several centers across the province that are working together with SPARC. We hope to help strengthen the understanding and collaboration in sport across our province. And so this is a manifesto that we go by, and it will come in handy later because we're going to talk about maybe not the word manifesto. I'm going to use the word your credo and what that means, and coming up with that for your athletes or for yourself as a coach as well. Thinking about, we're all on this call together from vast, beautiful regions, and thinking about what this means for your community, what this means for your sport, what this means for your family. So thinking provincially, some of these big dream ideas and how we can bring this home. So we decided to start here because we know that if we are driving a program that is, especially one that's going through the change, the way our programs have had to go like this, up and down pretty much since the get-go, since March. It's been all over the place, stop, go, up, down, very challenging. Setting goals can help us feel more in control of our situation. So we need to think about what we can do by setting goals to make, sorry about that, folks, what we can do to move forward. And especially in uncertain times, this can be really critical, is to have some goals that anchor you in both personally and maybe as a training group or a program. this goal setting helps move people forwards versus backwards, or it could be even that goals just move you laterally, so they move you to the side. It could be that we're having to just adjust which direction we're going in. We're neither going up nor down. We have to shift because conditions have shifted. COVID-19 has forced us to do so, or some other outside force. And so I try to get, when I'm talking about goal setting with sports or with athletes, it's really a mapping exercise. So we're charting some kind of a course together. I came up with this brilliant play on words in terms of becoming a SPARC or an iSpark. So thinking about how we really are in this all together, it's something so much bigger. So whether it's thinking about yourself as a bigger Team BC, who are all right now, unfortunately, separated and don't have some of those same ties that bind through a particular competition. It could be that thinking about in your community being a spark for making something happen for a colleague or an athlete or a child who needs something to look forward to. And so this concept of spark, what I mean by that is making sure that you keep that, the reason why you chose to participate or you chose to coach or compete as an athlete in the first place, trying to remember that spark, what it is, and how to conjure that up every day, especially on the days when we sort of think to ourselves, what is the point, at this point? So how do we think about being a spark? And I thought it'd be fun to take a look at an example. This is a very well-known example. It went viral, but it's from Jordan Tutu being a spark, and it went viral all over the place. This little, I don't even know who this kid is, but he was a spark in this moment. So this is what a spark looks like. When you affect someone by a small gesture that lights a fire in them. So here's what that looked like. And some of you might recognize this and know the clip that I'm about to play.
Hello, buddy. It's all yours. Whoa! Whoa!
So that's someone being a spark. And so it doesn't have to be something as grandiose as being a professional athlete, who's giving, their stick away to a child, a fan who's starry-eyed in that moment. It could be something like giving out a piece of advice or support to, like I mentioned earlier, a teammate or one of your athletes, or maybe it's a fellow coach or someone in community that's been really important and supportive to your program and could use a little extra support. So everybody's in a different situation right now. So if you're going to be setting goals, first thing I think you need to do, and I'm big on this, you know this from past webinars if you've seen me, I always try to make sure that I check in with my athletes. Where are they at right now? So what is going on in their life? Are they ready to start the goals? Do we need to figure out where their heart is? Do we need to reignite the spark? Do we need to do all three? Are we hoping that the goals will ignite the heart and the spark? Which is it? So at least having the conversation, or maybe it's a virtual dialogue or whatever that is. And you can do this goal setting work can happen individually. It could be something you could do as a team, or maybe as a smaller cohort, like a training group. It's really up to you. So got a few steps that we can go through here and where we might want to start figuring out, first of all, where are your athletes at? Or if you're an athlete, where are you at? So the 5 steps that I'm going to go through tonight, we're just going to do them one by one, but it could be that you might want to do them in a slightly different order, and that's okay too. They actually don't all need to be done in this order. They could happen. It really depends on your personality. It also might depend on the demands of your sport and how accessible some of the things that I'm about to discuss with you are. So one place though that I would like to start tonight is with this concept of a credo. And for some of you, this might be a brand new word. It's just not something that enters in your vocabulary and you've never heard it before, Or some you might have thought about it, but it's not really something that you use in your program. And you don't need to use this word. You can choose a word that makes sense to you and your training group or your athletes or your team. Some like to say motto, some like to say manifesto, some it might be your rules to live by. It could be framed in your culture and some cultural principles. So whatever this looks like to you, if it's translated literally, it just means the beliefs that guide our actions. You could even say these are the values and the beliefs that form our character, is what they are. And this, if you begin with the credo and you really think about what you stand for and who you are as an individual athlete and your program, or you as a coach, it can help you with your resiliency. It can help you adapt, because you can just go back, well, what would my credo say? I just got another curveball thrown at me. I said, I stood for this. What does that mean now with this latest challenge that I have? Oh, another thing just got thrown at me, or something shifted again. What did I feel in my heart when I developed that credo? And it will evolve and change. So the credo of a 11-year-old athlete will be different from an 18-year-old athlete, will be different from a mature adult or a coach who has been doing this for decades. And it will evolve with you. Some of the principles will stay the same, and some of them will evolve as your life changes and your purpose in life might evolve as well. But I think this is so key, especially for youth today, to maintain a sense of optimism and to give them something that they feel control over in a very unpredictable environment that we're in right now in sport. So the credo is a great place to start. You look at a couple dimensions, so who they are and some of their identifiers, so the elements that make up their identity. And depends, because some of you I know are going to be in sports that are more individual, where your athletes spending a lot of time training on their own individually and competing on their own, and others are coaches or participants in team sport where the we is really critical. I would argue the we is still important, whether you are an individual athlete or a team sport athlete, because we are still part of a much bigger picture. So it's always good to have a collective mindset as well. Sport really can get very drilled into what's in it for me, when in fact it has to be something bigger, I think, to sustain, especially a young person that's looking for purpose. And then the other side of that, so there's the who and then the why. So asking a couple questions to them, setting out something via an email or a group text, or having a Zoom call, or if you're fortunate enough that you can meet in person, having a bit of a distance discussion about what the who and the why might be, if you're at a level of comfort where you can talk about these things openly. Or it could be something that there's still a distance there, and maybe your training groups don't have that same level of trust. So it's something that you can explain, but encourage that they do individually for themselves, and maybe share with someone that they know well, or even you, if you are a leader that they trust. I guess it kind of comes down to, you can ask the pointed question, who are you, or who do you want to be when you do your sport? What do you want your sport to bring out in you? And who do you want to be, whether it's on that field of play or off that field of play? What are some of those consistent some of the things that you might see in a credo that an athlete will come up with before they start setting some more concrete goals? Could be some of these ones that I've suggested here. So it might be being brave, or being courageous, a sense of optimism, trying to be themselves, so not trying to be somebody else, being okay with who they are in that moment and being open about their authenticity, a sense of honor and pride, depending where that's coming from, because everyone has a different identity and a biography of where they identify, and maybe that's still a journey for them where they aren't sure where they are. Sport's a beautiful thing that it can help us amplify and I think magnify some of these deeper identity issues if we allow this really important discussion to happen. I think it's the heart of everything in human performance is, who are you? And what do you want when someone's watching you compete and sees you in an interview, or sees you on the field of play, or sees you marching in a ceremony? You know, who do they see? Who do you want to project? Being part of that bigger picture. You'll see I've got the spark in there. So thinking about, remember, there's the little spark. Someone's watching, especially a younger version of you may be watching in all these moments. Who are you affecting? And what does that look like? So the credo can address that. And if you want an interesting summer read, we're still summer, I guess, right? We're into, getting into the final throes of August, but this book is a great read. I don't know if anyone wants to show in the chat room if they have read it or not. If any of you have, you can indicate. I'd just be interested to know if any of you have heard of this book or possibly read it. But a lot of rugby fans, let me look. Oh, someone clicked. I did. Yay. Okay, Lisa did. And it is a really beautiful read. I was quite interested. I'm always interested in understanding the people behind sport, like the real humans behind sport, but also the bigger, broader cultural context. And what makes the All Blacks rugby team in New Zealand so unique is partly their journey, which has been also a colonized journey similar to Canada, but still very unique, because they are, all of us have unique regions on this planet. And how the sport of rugby and this concept of this elite sport, and using all these cultural traditions of the Maori, and now have really been, I think, a huge influencer on they have created. So this idea of All Blacks rugby and the Ferns, the women's version, they have 15 principles that and they're evolving as well. But at the time of the writing of this book, these 15 principles can be really interesting just to read from a historical perspective of what helped them create this powerhouse of a rugby program. And I've just listed 5 here. There are 10 in total. The one sweeping the sheds, this element of their credo or their manifesto is, there's no one's too good for any job here. So anyone needs to be able to pick up that broom and sweep the shed. We all do this together. This is we don't have the same hierarchies as you might have expected coming into this as some superstar. Well, everyone's a superstar in this program, and everyone is the workhorse. So we need to all sweep the sheds, play with purpose. So every person in this program has to have this higher purpose, that connection to a higher purpose. And it might be slightly different for every player, but this is really critical of having that, tapping into that holistic reason of why we're all here, acknowledging our humanity, creating learning environments. It isn't just about, okay, you need to go and learn that pass because I said so. It's more like, well, we need to be able to pass efficiently because, and every day is a classroom. Every day is a learning classroom, whether it's on the field or in the locker room, whatever that looks like, that it's a rich learning environment. Honoring their ancestors and where they came from. Again, there's a lot of diversity in the program, and everyone came from a different walk. And honoring that is a very important backbone of their program, which I thought was very unique and is something that more programs need to do. And then they don't actually say don't be a jerk. It's a little more colorful language that they use, but I can't use the language that they use on this G-rated webinar. But they use, let's just say they use some stronger language. Don't be a something. So really just that, you know what, we just don't have time for you if you're going to be a jerk. Everybody has some challenges in their bad days for sure, but they really try to keep each other in check. And what team can benefit from that? So the credo albeit it isn't necessarily directly linked, you might think, in the moment of setting goals. But if you don't know who you are, and you don't know what you stand for, and you don't know what your purpose is, and you don't know, and you don't know, don't know, these are some really important questions that we could and should be working on right now while we wait for so many unknowns to become more known in the months ahead. And I think we are being tested as humanity. We are being tested right now. So when is there a better time than to think about these things that bind us? And so something to think about in terms of developing a credo is just a really strong image of the All Blacks. You can see the connection as well. What I love is really the feeling of family too, and that sense of it is a community. It is not just a team, it is a community. And when you are open, your arms are open to you to join that community, it is a huge honor that they don't take lightly. And I just felt this was a really strong image. So that's step number one. So getting this strong, this credo, if you can, thinking about that foundation that you want to set, who you're coaching or who you are if you're the athlete, and why, they're there, why they're presenting if you're the coach, or if you're the athlete, why this program, why this sport, why this journey. The second piece is then starting to map out what some of those dreams might look like. And this is where things get sticky in a pandemic, because we are in a situation where it would be so wonderful to say that we know exactly what date everything's going to happen. We know when everything's going to get under control. We know what different outcomes are going to be, whether it's a major games or even just a local or regional games. Things are changing so quickly and can be largely out. So when we're talking about connecting with dreams are free. I mean, it's okay to have dreams, and it's also okay to have to transform those dreams if the circumstances surrounding them shift. And that will come up later too. That's one of the steps as well. So this first one, connecting with your dreams, meaning, well, what are some of the things, if I were to close my eyes right now and I could make something amazing happen for myself and be somewhere, be doing something, what would it look like? And so it could be for these two, this is what they see, or it could be any number of dreams, big or small. But what that dream looks like is going to be dependent on a bunch of factors, and they're going to be individual to each athlete and each program as well. They're in the distance, right? That's why, they're dreams, they're for the future. However, we need to find a way to get our athletes to connect with them. Ideally every day. I would like to believe that, not a week goes by that they aren't thinking somehow about that sport that they love, or that those activities, those people that they miss or they love. So something that you can give them to connect with them. So much is in flux. So it could be something as finite as a particular competition in the future that everyone's crossing their fingers about. Or it could be a certain level of performance, depending on how old they are and where they are in their journey. They might have some benchmarks that they're aiming for later in their life. It could even be something like they aspire, an athlete might aspire to be you, for the coaches that are on here, to be you someday. So it might even be beyond their athletic pursuits. It might be that you have a future leader in training, for all you know. If you ask that question, what's the dream? The dream is to be you and to lead in my community and be a sport leader. And we don't know if we don't ask. So sometimes I'll have my athletes do cool art projects where they make like a map, and sky's the limit. No dream is too big or too small. And they can kick it old school and find a magazine, if they even know what a magazine is anymore. I'm not sure if they do, or go online and get some pictures that embody that for them, or come up with some other way to visually represent what those look like, and maybe have that in a place where they can think about it, or it can conjure something up. on a daily or weekly basis when they're losing motivation. Or it could be simply a list. It could be something in a journal. It could be a checklist of items, or it could be, you know, a secret page in the back of a workbook that they have, or a memo somewhere hidden on their phone, whatever that is. And it could also include things like vocation or education plans that might even be tied in with sport. Maybe some particular training goals, a skill that they just can't nail, but they've watched the best of the best do it, and one day that's their dream. So who knows what they'll be, but this is the question I put to athletes, and that coaches, you can put to your athletes as well. And then, so you've got the vague or maybe very pointed idea of what those dreams are, but then how are we going to make them connect with them, and how do they see themselves fitting into that dream? So this might mean some research. There's many a young athlete has thought to himself, you know, I want to be that guy, I want to be that person, that girl over there. But do we know how they got there? And the reality is, even if we know how they got there, it could be that we're going to have our own unique path. But being a bit of a researcher and an investigator about some of the things that it might take to get some of the support in order to make that happen. And what's super cool about having all this digital world around us is that there's never been a better time to do research, I think, by using tools like the internet and being able to do that. But also, what might it take from a commitment standpoint? So if there's a particular skill that they're dreaming of being able to conquer in the next 6 months, for example, or whatever that is, what would it take from a commitment standpoint? Like, it will take some actual deliberate practice to make that happen. You know, you don't rub your hands together, magic potion, and it just happens. So what would that commitment level look like, or what would some of those resources look like? So the dream, but then how do we connect with it? And let's do a little bit of research to see what they might want to still keep on that target list. So that's number 2. So what are those dreams? Way off in the distance, or maybe not so far away. It totally depends on your athlete. It depends on you and your realities of your program. And then step number 3. So this is where things get split. If you were tuned into some of my past webinars where I talked about the difference between a mastery climate and a performance climate. So having a mastery motivational approach versus performance, they're both really important. You need both. But right now probably is a really great time to work on the mastery goals in particular. And I'll get into that in a second, because I know not everybody who's on the webinar tonight would have been there in some of the past sessions. And you're going to want to look at both for the longer term, but also for the shorter term of some of these goals. So this I borrowed from one of the past webinars, just as a reminder, if it's been a while and maybe you haven't thought about it between now and then. But a lot of athletes are like, you know, if you can't give me a finite date when I'm going to be able to compete again, or when XYZ is happening, I'm having a really tough time getting into my training. You know, so I've got some of these like online training programs, or doing things virtually, or doing things with Zoom. Tons of things have been canceled. Well, mastery mindset can really help with this, because mastery isn't predicated on having a competition. It's really, you're competing against yourself in this mastery mindset. So it's leaning more towards the credo concept, and also still being the athlete, still looking at the mastery. But again, the chief competitor is you, that you are competing against, really. And this idea of mastery versus performance is a little more clearly outlined on this screen here. So mastery is really where you're perfecting that skill, or you're gaining confidence maybe in a certain area. And the performance goals are where you're able to measure up against somebody else. So maybe in a competition, or you have some kind of, what has been really interesting is that some teams have now been doing online challenges and doing online competitions with each other just because they're just so desperate to be able to compete in some way. So some sports have gotten really creative and are able to do that. I just found out about a figure skating virtual competition that just happened last week where you had skaters that were being judged based on video submission. And so when you're in some of these sports that are judged, it's possible, but other team sports, for example, that gets really challenging. So we have to break it down into finite skills where you could have a skills competition like they do in all these all-star games, that type of thing. Or it can be very individualized for that particular athlete, where they've got something that they can do that will show a sense of, or feed a sense of competitiveness, maybe even with their other teammates or their training partners. And then also some things that are just for them, things that they want to set as an individual hill to conquer. And they might want to work on that with you as the coach to see if you can get them the kind of resources, whether it's in person or virtually, to make that happen. So try to ensure that they have a balance of both. So some of those goals might be things they can attain in the short term. If they really get some kind of broken down idea of what it's going to take from a skill progression, for example, and then make sure that maybe we use some creativity to have some team challenges or that all-star game concept where we still stoke that little competitive edge and the spark that they need in order to feel like they're still connected on a competitive level until we can compete again. I gave this as an example. I didn't use the golf as the example last time, but it would be a great one, is they can track these kinds of goals on their phone. There are lots of apps, actually. If you look online, you can see all kinds of sport and goal trackers that you can personalize, or you can do it old school, like the journal that I have here. Something happens when you take someone's spoken word or something like a webinar, and you're actually converting that into notes, and you're taking those notes, whether they're written or on the phone. It's committing them to some deeper learning when we actually transform them into a thought that we can then commit to later. Instead of just you coming up with a set of goals and emailing that out to the team, they have to be able to come up with this stuff. They have to conjure it. Way better chance of them actually sticking to it and having the motivation if they came up with it themselves and had a mechanism for reminding themselves, oh, right, according to my credo, one of my credo pieces is persistence. I guess I can't give up, And so thinking about tying in also that credo, reminding them to tap into that, or whatever you want to call it. You don't have to call it your credo, but those principles of who they are as an athlete as they start to form their identity. And this is one way you can do it, with having this mastery mindset of something they can track that isn't reliant on someone else or a competition to measure themselves up against. One thing that some programs will do, and I did this with about this time last year, we were actually doing this with a softball team in a field house, and so wishing I could go back there and feel those same preseason jitters again. And a lot of things feel really different this year, but we can still look at a lot of the elements on the left-hand column of the things that are in our control. These were what we came up with in our brainstorm. And so if we think about it, even with the conditions of COVID-19 and how it has transformed things, a lot of these things within our control are still in our control. So things like our physical preparation and fitness and those regimes, and staying connected and recreating and all those really important physical side of things. And the mental piece, so coming up with goals, coming up with ways to remind ourselves using maybe cue words. And I'm going to go through a few other goal setting mental training tricks at the end of the webinar today. Things like effort and work ethic. Well, it isn't just about the work ethic and the effort that we exhibit in the midst of a competition. The training is where we have the bulk of those tests, I think, in times like these. So that's still very pertinent. Nutrition and hydration, rest and recovery, communication, even if sometimes the communication is going to be different. It's going to be largely virtual for some folks. or getting creative with the ways that you communicate. Things like your intensity and the level of commitment and energy that you bring to those moments that you set aside. And then finally, camaraderie, and this is a really big one. So being able to feel linked, even when sometimes we're not linked in the same way. And then finally, of course, attitude, and attitude's directly linked right back with the credo piece too. So hopefully that's all tied in there. All this other stuff, I didn't, believe it or not, last year in August, I did not have pandemic on the things out of our control. I mean, it was pretty much the last thing on my, it was on no one's list other than epidemiologists. And so doing a brainstorm like this with your team, and especially if you go in and you don't pre-feed this stuff to them, just do the brainstorm. You're going to find they're going to come up with a lot of this stuff on their own on the left-hand column. And then we can set some of the stuff in the right-hand column free, because so much of it is out of our control anyway. And a lot of it is tied in as well with competition schedules and things like that that are so unpredictable. Well, then we're not going to get too bogged down with that. As athletes, what we're going to do is we're going to try to focus our energies on the things that we can control. And this will help us balance some of that anxiety and that sense of sort of feeling lost at times like this. So some sport specific examples that of this concept, and just thinking about, for example, we could have archery or we could have golf. So some individual examples. With a mastery or a performance mindset, so making sure that you have goals for both, you could look at setting some short-term ones. So maybe in the next month, while the weather's still nice, and whether they're outdoor or indoor competition, setting practice times that that it can feel consistent about, and connect them to maybe some other training partners or whatever that's going to look like. But setting those and having some kind of a regular schedule. And perhaps for many of you in some of the sports that we were able to distance, it's possible that you were able to continue to participate, and some were not so fortunate. For those, we might want to get them, especially as we head into the fall and weather becomes more unpredictable, and some of the circumstances surrounding our public health issues get more unpredictable. Watching video, other tips to be able to practice at home or in a more controlled environment, and making sure that they have some of these goals again that are balanced. So it could be some performance goals that they are competing against maybe teammates or training partners or some of their opposition that are also part of your coaching group, or they are working on a skill or something that is not even skill related. It could actually be some of the other things from the left-hand column, like improving their hydration. They really struggle with having a water bottle with them at all times. Or it could be that some of their nutritional choices have gone downhill since doing more comfort eating, stuff like that with COVID-19, and they'd really like to get back on a different way of managing meal planning and things like that. So mastery and performance mindset for the short term, and then looking at sort of long term as well would be then tracking. If there's something that they set their minds to short term, or maybe there was something more long term, that you have some means for them to track so that they have a sense of, am I getting somewhere? What will it look like for me to know that I'm getting somewhere? And it's hard for me to give an example here because it's going to be so different for every sport. But you might be able to get some help by looking at some of the online communities, because they're, almost everyone is in this similar boat of how do we motivate and break down some of these practice plans and long-term skill development when we can't always be working one-on-one, or we haven't even managed to do some team selections, or we're really working in a decentralized program. What could that look like? So there might be someone a heck of a lot smarter than me who's your sport specific expert who can help you come up with some of those longer term mastery and performance goals. And then if you find one, get on their mailing list, so that, because some of them have taken to taking tutorial videos and doing, I mean, everyone's just wanting so much to connect with people out there. So some of the videos are better than others, but if you can find some that you like and that you think are a quality that your athletes will connect with, or athletes do your own research. You don't have to leave it to your coach to do so. This is another way that you can potentially help yourself set some of those short and long-term, both mastery and performance goals as well. And then we're going to talk in a few minutes about, many of you may have seen this before, if you have taken any training in planning and practice or setting goals, that having them SMART, both specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely, or time sensitive, time bound, are really important. Particularly the performance goals are a really important way to enhance the impacts of doing goal setting when you're looking towards performance outcomes. So that's the third piece. So thinking of the two branches, one being mastery mindset oriented, and then the other being more performance mindset oriented, and breaking them into both short term, and that could be the next month, that could be the next 2-week blocks or something like that, or maybe seasonal, and then longer term. So it could be to take you through to the fall, or to take you through to the winter or next spring. And then the fourth, if you've got those kind of bigger pictures and the dream is beyond that and the credo underlines it all, step 4 is finding a way to break that down into daily performance environment and to connect with it daily. And some athletes might say, hey, you know what, like, I got a lot going on. I'm not thinking about sport every single day. And that's cool too. So maybe it's more weekly and you have some designated days that you really try to dedicate some time towards your sport development. And that's more realistic for your particular scenario. So everyone's going to be in a different situation. But for some athletes and coaches for whom sport is actually such an important positive grounding force in their life, it actually is very beneficial for them to have some daily check-ins, and that's okay too. So it's really going to vary depending on you and your personality and the place in the hierarchy that you put sport. So again, the mastery performance mindset, the athletes could go to the coach for a specific skill or a tactic breakdown that they could do alone, or maybe with a pair or in a small group within your training bubble. And it could be something that's not even to do, if it's more mastery oriented, with the performance outcome per se. I'm giving some specific sport examples today. So I've got volleyball, basketball, and golf represented here. So it could be that it's something specific like improving a jump serve, something that you can do on your own in volleyball. And you can submit some video that your sibling takes of you and can submit that to your coach. Again, we had someone raise this on a past call, that you have to be careful about getting bad habits also when athletes are training on their own and they don't have the coach's wise eye there to observe. So video is a way that we can also tweak and stay connected and know if we are now picking up some strange techniques, or maybe some not great habits and biomechanics. So this would be an important one to strengthen, like shooting from the foul line in basketball, or maybe your pre-shot routine would be an example in golf. For the measurable part, you might want to film it, get coach feedback, record your reflections, take some kind of, what have I got there? Whoops. I can't read that last word because it's statistics. So keeping your own tally if you're doing something that's statistics oriented, and so you want to make this sport specific as well. And then attainable and relevant, obviously, I mean, it could be that some athletes just want to have something because they want to do it for fun. It's something they'd never compete. If that's going to enhance their motivation and keep them connected, why not? But if you want it to be pertaining to the competition itself and what they're going to add to your team, you might want to make sure that these skills are more critical and applied skills that are something that everyone should be learning across the board. And then finally, having them break it down into some of the specifics. So for the next month, so I got 30 days, I'm going to set aside this many minutes, this many times a week, adding up however many hours it's going to total per week to work on skill X and Y. And again, not making it so huge that it's going to be next to impossible to achieve, but not making it so easy that it's going to be simple and require no effort, and they're going to get bored and think, well, what's the point? So it's got to be kind of a stretch goal, just out of the range, but attainable enough that it's going to feel great when it is achieved and we can start moving towards it. So this takes a bit of creativity, especially if we've taken the competition element for the most part away from things over these past few months. And so now we're on the home stretch. So the fifth step, and this one doesn't even sound like it would be a goal. This definitely sounds like a sports psychologist talking, but I'll tell you what, it's one of the most important ones. And it is making sure that we convey to our athletes, and athletes, for those of you that are tuned in, that you convey this to yourself, that we have to be okay with accepting where we're at and who we are, and being kind to ourselves no matter what happens, because there's a lot going on, and athletes are notoriously hard on themselves. This is probably one of the #1 challenges I have when working with performance athletes. These are very driven, and sometimes also very sensitive folks, and lovable at the same time. And so wanting to make sure that they love themselves, and they know that they might fall short, and that they take the shot and the goalpost moves. What happened? So we have to make sure that we learn to love ourselves and be kind, and that we have to be okay with falling short and losing. And it's going to sound weird, but as homework, I would recommend that in addition to the credo and the dream goal and the long and short-term mastery and performance goals, that you maybe tune into one or more episodes of this little gem that's on Netflix. And I'm just going to play the trailer for it in a second.
That's not a good thing.
She was not expected to actually win the race.
It's all about winning.
Anybody who goes to a football match expecting to win is an idiot, I think.
Oh my dear. He's 100% in his career loser.
He muttered to me, if you'll excuse my English, shit.
Losing is a habit. When you get that mindset, then you think you're never going to win a game again.
I said, that's it. I'm done with basketball. I said it to him many times. It's the biggest waste of talent I've ever seen.
I had never encountered that kind of darkness before, but I knew I had something to prove.
Before, it's like, what would have, could have, should have. That would probably haunt me. I'm sure it haunts her.
He was distraught. He was just saying, I'm never going to curl again.
Things happen for a reason, you know? And now, which part of yourself is going to come out? Who are you really? What are you made of?
You're not going to be a good loser. You're not going to be a good winner either.
Many days feel like crying, but winning is not the most important thing in life.
Getting knocked out was the best thing that ever happened to me.
There have been more downs than ups, but in a way, that makes the ups feel all the better.
So it's not often that I recommend you watch something called Losers. Doesn't sound like it'd be a great title from the start, but it's actually not even, it's not about the losing. It's about what comes from falling short. And I think it's a really important thing to think about when we're setting goals, knowing that it's possible that we won't reach some of them, or that we're going to have to shift them mid journey. And some of us are shifting them right now. You know, we've had to shift them over the last 6 months. So we have to find a way to connect with that credo every day and make sure that we accept and be kind to ourselves as part of it. So you could even include that in that credo and have some images that connect you to that goal, those goals that you have, and make sure that they're holistic. We had this amazing study that was done in 2019 at the University of Saskatchewan, looking at it's so much more than performing well in sport. And they interviewed all these amazing Indigenous women athletes and found out that the meaning in the experience was so much deeper. In fact, it wasn't even about the competition. It was all these other intangible things, the physical and the mental, emotional, cultural, spiritual, what the holistic coaching model and the athlete development model teaches us. So how do we get our athletes to recognize that and build that into their goal setting pathway and what we do as coaches? So last piece I'll leave you with before we sort of do a quick summary here is an exercise then, if we want them to have a way to daily connect with some of these goals, or in that moment be able to bring it back on demand. Oh yeah, what am I wanting to connect with? We want to connect our heart for sure, but if we want to connect our brain, we want to go right where this little arrow is at top of the brain stem here, a little bundle of nerves, has a little filter and it's tiny, the reticular activating system. You can think of it as a filter. And not only does it filter the things that we see, it filters the things we believe. And it filters a lot of the input that we have coming in. So we have literally millions, billions of thoughts coming through. And the retention rate is something like 7 concepts or thoughts can be retained for about 30 seconds. That's it. And then they disappear into la la land unless we keep reinforcing them. So if we set the intent, how we do that is you might have them think of a goal, think about what that would feel like, or the result of that goal. What would that look like? Get them to have some kind of a visualize that, or write it down, describe that, and then see that. Some people call it visualization or imagery, and some of you may have looked into this and used this before as a technique for achieving both physical skills, but also a way of changing your emotional state, is closing your eyes and really seeing yourself attaining that thing that you're looking to do in the future. Notice all the things around, so the sounds and the details and the visuals, and replay it. So this is free. It's something that needs to be trained, and I think it's underutilized in a lot of sports, the power of this connecting and using what we filter into that reticular activating system, images and the words. So why does it keep working backwards? Sorry, everyone. But making sure we connect with those goals and those images and those thoughts and those, hopefully we've written them down and really made them real. So on this one, just saying how you want to make sure that they get it down and keep it somewhere where they can go back to it. So it could be down old school in a notebook. It could be something they have handy on their phone with a few pictures of them in action, where they were feeling amazing. Or maybe it's someone else that they really admire, or it's a past team experience that brings up really great feelings of pride and purpose that align perfectly with their credo. And then projecting themselves in the future, what is possible if we set our minds to it, or if we do X, Y, and Z, and make sure there's a balance of mastery and performance. Find a way to make that commitment every day, even if it's not committing to the sport specific parts, it could be to the lifestyle parts. They're going to help you be a better athlete, not just a better golfer or a better softball player, or a better archer, a better holistic person as well. And then make sure you've got that means for being kind to the self and accepting oneself as well. I like using when and then. So making sure you have a little, an accountability framework. So when I practice my foul shots and I have my headphones on, then I don't download a new song from my favorite band. because I'm only gonna play them before or after I do that. And so it might be some kind of internal reward that an athlete rewards themselves with, or you could come up with one from a team perspective, or you could make it more something to share with others. So when you stick with it and something works for you, if you're successful with any of these things we've talked about tonight or anything else, that you're going to reach out to teammates or your coach and share it and make sure that you pay it forward so that this positive stuff can be contagious. So that could be the when and the then. So have them do that. But no matter what, coming back to the self-compassion and some I statements like, I'll be okay. I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to be kind to myself no matter what happens. If I have to shift my goals, I'll shift them. I'm going to roll with it. I've got a community that will shift with me, or I'm going to find that community that will shift with me. That coach will shift with me. And making sure that that's the backbone of those 5 steps as well. It might be the 5th one, but I think it's a really important one. And that's it. How am I for time? Ooh, I'm close. I want to, hopefully that's okay. But yeah, so there you go. I was motor talking at the end there. But yeah.
Hi, Shaunna. Thank you so much for presenting and delivering again such a wonderful webinar series. I'll leave a little bit of space now. I know that we've reached nearly 7 o'clock. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, to type it in the box, or just to ask Shaunna directly.
Oops. What happened there?
No, if there are no questions in the group chat that you will notice at the very bottom, I have left my contact information for you to reach myself, and I'm happy to forward private questions to Shaunna, and she could reach out to you directly. Oh, we do have a question. Any guidance for setting goals while injured, Shaunna?
Oh yeah, that's a really unique one, and it's a really critical one. So the goal setting for the injured athlete is going to be really unique to whatever their reality is. And that actually was the environment that I started out my career in. I worked in a sport medicine clinic. So pretty much all the athletes I worked with were injured. So it was all about working with, first of all, we'd want to know what some of the limitations might be if they have had assessments done, and then get educated on that. I assume this was a coaching question. I'm not sure if it was a coach that posed that question, but as much information as we can have to know how far we can safely go with a return to action, depending on what the injury was, especially treating it carefully if it was a brain injury. But whether it's soft tissue or skeletal or something to that effect, working with that athlete and making sure that there might be some elements, though, in that left-hand column, if you'll remember back to the broader brainstorm on different things that are within your control, there are some of them that really have nothing to do with the injury per se. There can be the video pieces. Visualization is so huge for injured athletes. And sometimes what I would do is I would find out details about their injury. And if we're able to get that information about what would be helpful to reduce inflammation, or to see them visualizing their, maybe they got a picture from a doctor or someone who could give you more information on the nature of the injury and what it will look like once they are healed. There are ways that you can use creative visualization as well to enhance healing. We can also use it to catch up with things like new tactics or strategies that can be there. They're in on any team talks, or they can actually be assigned a task on behalf of the team to do some research as to seeing if there are any new innovations that other athletes or other training groups are using that maybe you could try. And so empowering them to fulfill a special role while they get healed, and they can focus on their healing but still stay connected. So giving them a job, enhancing their mental sense of empowerment through things like visualization, making sure that we are slowly pushing them, of course, in a safe manner, making sure we have the medical clearance to be able to know what their stepwise progression is for safe return to sport. And above all else, staying connected with them. So making sure that they feel like they are part of your program, that you care. And I would encourage that any of their training partners and their teammates also be part of that healing community and journey, and make an effort to reach out to them as well. I hope some of those might help. And then they would help you, you would work with them to set some of those safe goals back into the return to play. Hope that helps. But also, can I say, Alyssa, if they have some specific questions about some specific athletes or a particular case, I could help give some more pointed advice if I knew a bit more about the case as well.
Okay, great. I will connect those individuals with you following this session.
Okay, awesome.
And thank you again, everyone, for attending tonight's session. And following the session, we will be sharing the clip with you, as well as any additional questions that you have. Thank you.